Entertainment.
Hey, welcome again to No Strings, Nigeria's first LGBT podcast. Ian, I am Mike Damon. I want to say thank you so much for joining me again for another episode. I really do appreciate all of your contributions and comments and everything put together. I really do appreciate. Well, for this week, I am going to be talking to a special, talented someone in Nigeria, and of course, she's a female. Yeah, she first came out of the closet on CNN while still in Nigeria. Such courage, you say. Well, the conversation is going to officially kickstart, and then I'll finally come back to talk with her. Don't go anywhere, because you don't want to miss. No Strings will, of course, be right back after this.
He can be your best friend. You're alive. Someone you can talk to. He's Mike Damon. You're listening to No Strings.
Welcome back to No Strings. No Strings is Nigeria's first LGBT podcast. And I am Mike Damon. Now, before we went on the recess, I said we were going to talk to a special someone, and that special person is Adejoke Tugbiyele. Please, let's welcome her to the show. She sure deserves it. Yeah. It's not every day you get to talk to wonderful people. Well, I want to say thank you so much, Adejoke, for gracing No Strings. You're welcome to No Strings, Nigeria's first LGBT podcast. I know you must be really proud of this, and I'm so happy that you took out the time to actually be a part of this. It's indeed a pleasure to have you on No Strings. Now, my listeners would like to know you. Can you tell us a little about you? Please, tell us.
Thank you for having me, Mike. I'm honored to be a guest on your groundbreaking podcast. It has very strong potential of becoming a vital tool for so many in Nigeria's LGBT community. I am the only daughter of Nigerian parents. Being the middle child, I have one senior and one junior brother. My paternal grandfather had 2 wives, and each of them had more than 5 children. So I come from a fairly large extended family. The first person in my family to come to the U.S. was one of my late uncles, who I actually called Grandpa. He studied at Harvard University in the 1950s and completed his master's thesis in 1956. It was called The Emergence of Nationalism and Federalism in Nigeria. I have an original copy of this book, and I read it often because it talks about the foundations of democracy for a country that was still under colonial rule at the time.
Okay. How was your growing up like? Where did you grow up? And did you grow up a regular person, or there was something particularly special about your childhood? Please tell us.
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, but at the age of 3, I was taken to Lagos, Nigeria, where I lived for 7 years. This was during the military dictatorship in the 80s, before my family eventually moved back to New York. In Lagos, I attended the Fountain School as a little girl, and then went on to Maryland Convent Private School in Ikeja. It's a private Catholic school, but I went to Yaba Baptist Church with my family every Sunday. I finished primary 5 there, but never went on to boarding school in Nigeria. Part of my childhood was spent living with my uncle, his wife, and children. One traumatic memory I have that stayed with me all my life is when my late uncle's house accidentally caught fire. It happened in the middle of the night, so my brother and I were actually sleeping at the time. My auntie ran out through the fire, grabbed us from our beds, and then out of the building. Unfortunately, she was left with 3rd and 4th degree burns all over her body. She saved our lives, and I am so grateful. The Babangida years were tough in Nigeria, but despite the troubles going on, my Lagos years were mostly pretty innocent. My parents were very protective of me, and my siblings and everyone in our community kept a close watch on us. As kids, we were so inventive without computers and constant television, coming up with our own games. Another fond memory I have is making kites out of traditional brooms and newspapers. Ironically, I still work with these materials in my art practice today. At the age of 7, I also helped form a creative youth organization called Children's Cooperative Club. We called it CCC for short. This was in Yaba with my brothers and a few best friends with whom I am still very close today.
Wow, you had quite a memorable childhood, I would say. I would want you to create an image with words because I want my listeners to intensely connect with you and your story. So what was it like in your house? Did you grow up with mom, dad, or both? Or maybe a relative or grandmother, or say just someone? Just take us in, please.
In Nigeria, I was raised mostly by my father and several aunts and uncles. My mother came to visit every now and then, but she was mainly based in the US. We didn't have a telephone at home, so my father would periodically drive my senior brother and I to Sheraton Hotel in Lagos to call my mom in America. My mom also sent us things from America all the time, like videos, baggy jeans, and stuff. I never felt uncared for as a child because, in addition to my dad, I had several wonderful aunties and uncles as guardians. They all stressed education, a connection with God, and encouraged me to be the best I can be. We had houseboys and housegirls to help us with house chores. A man by the name of Friday, or was it Saturday actually? He used to come once a week to iron our school uniforms and my father's clothes. Whoever the house help was at the time, well, they came and went for different reasons, would also cook and clean. This didn't mean that I was exempt from my own chores. I had a good set of them myself. After all, I had to be properly prepared for marriage.
Yeah, true. Most people think Nigeria is extremely homophobic due to its, being tagged a Christian nation, and the popular notion held by many Nigerians that homosexuality is un-African and alien to the African culture. And I understand that you're not in Nigeria, so how's life outside Nigeria? Is it any easier?
I don't really think I agree with the notion that Nigeria is extremely homophobic. In fact, I don't think anyone really knows. I'm a member of an organization in Nigeria called Solidarity Alliance for Human Rights. And one of the member organizations, TEARS, which stands for the Initiative for Equal Rights, partnered with Solidarity Alliance actually a year ago. It was May 2014. They partnered to conduct a survey to find out about attitudes and perceptions towards homosexuality in Nigeria. And the survey was aimed at Nigerians mostly, and actually only, and it was entirely anonymous. I believe it's still ongoing and can be found under the TEARS website, so I encourage you and your listeners to check it out. I applaud all these efforts because they stay away from the propaganda that is being spewed at the pulpits by religious clergy and conservative government forces that actually just want to maintain the status quo. Life in America is certainly easier for me politically. However, the emotional struggles of alienation and exile from family are still something I struggle with daily. Nigerians in the U.S. still think largely like those back home, and so I had to burden the same emotional and sometimes physical traumas like depression, suicidal thoughts, and so on. Yes, the U.S. has social structures like free counseling to help, but these counseling sessions, they are sometimes delivered mostly from a Western perspective, and so it was hard for me to relate their advice to my own personal family issues. Unfortunately, the counseling by anyone other than the priest or pastor is still generally frowned upon by Nigerians, which makes a situation that's already hard even harder to cope with. I would advise those who think homosexuality is un-African to read a new book that was just released and co-written by my friend and journalist, Steve Aborisade. It's called Guidebook to Reporting Gender and Sexuality in Nigeria. and part of the book mentions several African cultures in which homosexuality was not only practiced, but tolerated, and in some cases deemed sacred by the society members.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that book in one of my episodes. Tell me about your relocation from Nigeria. What prompted it? Please, I would need all the drama, that is, if there was any, because I suspect there must be some.
I traveled to Nigeria in 2013 on a Fulbright research grant. I wanted to experience Lagos as an independent adult without parental and family pressures. I also wanted to see how art and spirituality were interacting with each other, and I also wanted to find other people like me. Gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgendered persons of Nigerian descent. I wanted to see how they were generally coping with life and family issues. Were they like me? Were they different? I did make several friends with people in the gay and lesbian community, and I participated in a few events as well. One of them was the screening of this film called Veil of Silence by Habib Lawal. Many human rights advocates came together to demystify ideas about homosexuality in Nigeria. I actually recorded the entire question and answer session on video, and it has helped inform my life personally as well as my art practice. I got a deeper understanding of the level of secrecy one must live with as a gay Nigerian, as well as all the taboos that exist. It was a very historic session, and I was so excited to be there for it. About 3 months into my stay, the anti-gay bill was signed. This was on January 7th, 2014. It was one of the most frightening moments of my life, because immediately afterwards, we started hearing stories of people being killed and attacked by mobs. People were outing each other to the police for money, or gay people outing their friends out of fear of who would out each other first. A newspaper article I read was titled that the homosexuality bill was actually the best gift the president could ever give Nigerians. And other scary headlines surfaced. I still have all the newspaper clippings. Then, for some reason, I was contacted and sought out by a correspondent at CNN called Vladimir Dutier's. He wanted to conduct an interview with a lesbian currently living in Nigeria at the outbreak of the law. They also interviewed a friend of mine who was working at Tears by the name of Michael Akonji. I actually didn't think twice about saying yes because I felt this was the reason I came to Nigeria in the first place, to work and do research and live as a free, openly gay person in the land of my ancestors. My leave was prompted by my opening up about my sexuality on international media, after which I was advised by several people, both in my personal and professional circle, to leave the country because should anything happen, I would have no protection. I listened to all of them and I left.
Well, you took, it was really courageous for you to actually come out in public television, CNN. Has there been any regrets since you left?
I have never intentionally disappointed anyone simply by choosing to live my truth. I blame the disappointment felt by my family on the brainwashing caused by both African and non-African religious fanatics and conservative politicians who are still largely ignorant on the subject and also completely intolerant to other definitions of love. With all the information out there today, some Nigerians willfully choose to remain ignorant, and this is probably the most baffling thing to me still. I will say, however, that the shock of my coming out was partly due to my family getting used to seeing me as a married woman for almost 7 years.